Hello everybody, welcome in. I'm Alek Koberna, one of the founders of Casual Sports Report. We had another weekend of college football, and you know what that means. Another top 12. We had some upsets, a couple things we didn't like from certain teams, but without any further ado, let's get into it. So, we're going to start down here. Number 12, Miami University. They came off the bye, but they're taking on NC State this weekend. Should be an interesting matchup. We have them down here at 12. They're back in the rankings after missing it, I believe, last week. Expecting good things out of them. They were promising off at the start of the season with their quarterback transfer from Houston. They were letting it up. He was even getting some Heisman talk early on, but slipped up one game. They're back in the top 12. Excited to see where that goes. Number 11 now, Oregon. The Ducks, first game of the season coming up this Saturday, taking on Stanford at 7:30 on ABC. Make sure to watch this one. We're expecting a team that should be able to compete for a national championship. They're supposed to be able to compete at this high caliber. This is where we're going to find out if they're legit or not. There's been a lot of questions about, they lost their quarterback, Justin Herbert. How are they going to be able to respond? They have one of the best defensive ends in the country this year. We should be able to see something great out of them. Hopefully they get to stay in these rankings, move up a little bit, because as we're getting farther up, a lot of teams are surprisingly losing. Some of the ones we thought would probably be contenders this year. Teams like Oregon have a great opportunity this year to go in and claim that spot, that fourth spot in the national championship playoffs. Now, number 10, Wisconsin. They've missed their last game to Nebraska due to the coronavirus, but we saw them week 1 come out and dominate Illinois. They won 35-7. Their new quarterback, he looks amazing. Granted, this was against Illinois, so we don't want to start hyping this up too much, but with how they performed and how we saw them, it should be exciting to see going forward. Now, they already have canceled next week's game against Purdue, so that one's going to be canceled. Then the week after that, I believe it's Michigan on the 14th. Obviously, we're going to talk about that game more next week, so long as it doesn't get canceled on the Casual Sports Podcast. Wisconsin, though, could be another one of those teams going to be competing for the Big Ten with Ohio State, most likely, because Ohio State right now is looking like the Big Ten East is running through them. We just saw Michigan lost. That's why they've dropped out of our top 12. They were there last week. They got the number 12 spot that's currently taken by Miami. Michigan, though, they lost that close one to Minnesota, and we don't really know how they're going to come back from this. Obviously, it all comes down to the game at the end of the year. Ohio State, Michigan. That's the game to watch for. That's the game that's going to pick the Big Ten East now, because Ohio State took down Penn State. We'll get to that a little bit. Now coming in, number 9, BYU. They're going incredible this season. Just picked up the victory against Western Kentucky, 41-10. They've been dominant. They're 7-0 this season. First real test coming up, though, this Saturday, or actually this Friday. They're taking on Boise State, 9:45, Fox Sports 1. A little bit of a weird time, weird scheduling, but that's how the Mountain West is going to work. They're not going to conform to your schedule, but they're moving up. Watch BYU. Their quarterback's getting potential Heisman voting right now. Interesting to look at going forward. And this Friday, first real big test of the season. They'd had a matchup against number 22 ranked Army earlier this season, but that game actually got postponed due to coronavirus as well. Now moving up the board one more time, we got Texas A&M. Kellen Mond and those Aggies are looking phenomenal. They just beat Arkansas. Defense is a little bit shaky. They won that game 42-31. Arkansas was a 2-2 team going into that, so that 31 points defense was a little loose that time around. But they're going to be taking on South Carolina this Saturday. We expect them to win it, but potential upset in the brewing there. They've been very good this season, but we're not expecting a loss from this one. Now Florida, they've gone back-to-back bye weeks. We have them coming in at number 7, though. And this is the big weekend for Florida. The biggest rivalry, I think, of the weekend. It's going to be Florida, Georgia. You know the rivalry. They made a song about it. Actually, no, there's a band about it. Florida-Georgia line. Kyle Pitts and Kyle Trask. The Kyle duo is destroying college football right now. Pitts is looking like he's still one of the best tight end wide receivers we've seen in a long time. He's got the size, the attributes. Kyle Trask still playing at a Heisman level of play. We're expecting to see a big game from them, and I think they have the real chance to pull off the win against Georgia this weekend. Now coming in at number 6, kind of hard to see here without doing everything. We got Cincinnati, the Bearcats, Luke Fickell, and the Fighting Fickles. They're doing amazing. They're one of the few teams that we've been talking about, one of these group of 5 teams that actually have a shot to make the playoffs. Part of that's because of the recognition that the program has gotten since Luke Fickell joined them after being with Ohio State in his interim head coaching position there. He came from Ohio State, a big school, went to Cincinnati now, and they have been consistently inside the top 25 the past 4 seasons. And they're finally getting the recognition they deserve. They've started off, I think, the last 2 seasons 8-0. They've been fantastic. We're expecting the same thing this year. They just took down Memphis. College Game Day was expecting Memphis to come in there and pull off a massive upset over Cincinnati because everyone was saying, oh, Cincinnati's defense doesn't look great. We haven't seen anything from their offense. Well, they put all that to shreds. They destroyed Memphis 49-10. This weekend, though, should be a good matchup. They're taking on Houston, 3:30 on Saturday on ESPN. Make sure to check that out because we don't know what to expect from Cincinnati. We know they're a good team. We know that they can beat teams that are supposed to be at their level. We don't know how they're going to go up against some of these other teams on here, and we won't know unless they go to a playoff game or a bowl game. But even bowl games this year are becoming kind of tricky with the whole coronavirus. How many are we really going to have? Are any of these even going to be played? There are a lot of questions coming up that we're going to be talking about in later weeks on the podcast once we get closer to the end of the season. But now, number 5, Georgia. They beat Kentucky 14-3. Personally, I think this is one of the most boring top 5 teams I have ever watched. They have a short quarterback. It's caused some issues with balls getting tipped at the line this season. I'm not too worried about it. They've won the games they needed to. They have the 1 loss. I'm not really concerned. But this is going to be the de facto SEC East championship game. Florida, Georgia. This is the game of the week. CBS, 3:30. This is the one to watch. Because whoever wins this one takes on Alabama in the SEC championship so long as Bama doesn't blow that one or blow something before that, which no one's expecting them to. It's Nick Saban. You can't count the guy out. He's going to come out. He's going to compete. He's going to win. That's what they do down there in Tuscaloosa. That's what happens. So, now the top 4. Top 4 is first time we don't have a unanimous number 1. Past few weeks, Clemson has received every single number 1 vote, Alabama all the number 2s, and Ohio State all the number 3s. That was different this week. However, our top 4, it looks about the same. Clemson's number 1, Bama's number 2, Ohio State's the number 3, and Notre Dame is at number 4. Notre Dame, it's hard not to put them in until they lose because we're running out of undefeated teams to put up there. You got to find those Power 5 teams that are undefeated, and frankly, that's the guys you have to put at the top. If they don't lose, we can't say they're terrible football teams, and we can't move them down. But Notre Dame just took down Georgia Tech 31-13. Personally, I had them back at number 5, but the rest of the crew from the Casual Sports Podcast had them up higher, so they went up to number 4th. I'm still not over their 5-point victory against Louisville when they won 12-7. I haven't been excited by this team all year. I'm waiting for them to do something, make that statement win, and they actually have the opportunity to do so this weekend. I don't think they're going to get it done because they're taking on number 1 Clemson. Clemson, Notre Dame, 1 versus 4. This is the number 2 game to watch. You know, I have this Georgia-Florida game more important, but this Notre Dame-Clemson game is almost equally as important when we're talking about standings, how this is affecting the playoffs. Because Georgia-Florida, one of these teams loses, they're done. They're out. They have no more shot to make the playoffs. And they get the chance to go compete in the SEC championship game. That's what's so important about this ball game. But now we're going Clemson to Notre Dame. Even if one of these 2 teams loses, they're still in the playoff hunt. They're only going to be a 1-loss team. And they would have lost to the best team in their conference. In Notre Dame's case, if they lose to Clemson, if it's close, I can only see them dropping maybe to 6th or 7th. If Clemson loses and that one's close, I don't even think they'll drop out of the top 4. To be honest, I think they'll probably end up at number 4. And not just our rankings, I think that's national. If Clemson loses without their starting quarterback, because Trevor Lawrence has still been ruled out once again. He has COVID symptoms, so their backup quarterback, former 5-star recruit, number 1 quarterback prospect from last year's high school class. I don't want to offend any names here, but DJ Ugalele, I believe, is one of the pronunciations I've heard. Don't quote me on that one. Apologize if I got that wrong. He looked good last week. They had the big comeback against Boston College. Boston College was up, I believe, 28-7 in the first half. But then in the second half, Clemson's defense stepped up, held BC to 0 points, and Clemson's offense started ticking. Travis Etienne, a god among men out there, perhaps the best running back in all of college football right now, was running all over Boston College in that second half. And they let DJ open up the offense a little bit, and he showed he can perform at a high level. Doesn't nearly have the accuracy as Trevor Lawrence. That's to be expected. He's only a freshman. He's already got the arm strength, though. He's got the physicals. They should be good to go against Notre Dame as long as they play their style of football. They can't let Notre Dame come in and start controlling the tempo, controlling the pace, controlling how you play the game. Clemson has to play Clemson football, and Dabo Swinney knows that. Dabo Swinney is one of the best coaches in all of college football right now, if we're talking about how he prepares his guys for games. I mean, you've seen Clemson face adversity time and time again. This is although like the first time they've had to face adversity inside of their own conference. Normally, the ACC has been a cakewalk in recent years. Most people have called it like, man, is Clemson even worthy of being into the playoffs? Which they proved yes once they get there, just based on the fact that they really don't have to face anybody. I mean, it wasn't until last season. Wake Forest was all right. They were pretty good most of the season. Clemson finally got to take them on. Clemson wiped the floor with them. That was kind of Clemson's statement win. Then they got into the ACC championship game, dominated that one against a much lesser opponent, went on to the college football semifinals, beat Ohio State in what some have called controversial calls and decisions. We've already let our views out on that one. That's why number 1, number 4, this is a huge game this weekend. Now, Ohio State. They took on their rival, Penn State. And the scoreboard really didn't show what the game was. Final score 38-25. You look at that, you're like, man, only a 2-possession ball game. 13-point victory. Justin Fields and that Ohio State offense was dominant that entire ball game. Defense had a few holes, much like I described in last week's podcast. Penn State was able to expose a few places, but Ohio State's defensive line looked a lot better. Their linebackers finally started showing up, which we've been lacking in Columbus the past season and a half, 2 seasons, after Buckeyes lost a lot of talent to the NFL draft. It's their biggest weakness on defense is that linebacker core, and Pete Warner and Tuff Borland are finally playing like they were supposed to, like we always thought they could be. They're looking a lot better, be able to make a run this season. Obviously, the Big Ten runs through them until proven otherwise. They're taking on Rutgers this weekend. Should be a cakewalk. Although Rutgers has already given a lot of team problems this year. Obviously pulled off the big upset week 1 to Michigan State. Their first win in the Big Ten since 2017. That is insane. Michigan State obviously just pulled off the huge upset over Michigan, which was unexpected. And it's really making you start questioning Michigan now. And with Ohio State beating Penn State, the only other team in the Big Ten that's going to be competing with them is most likely Wisconsin, because Minnesota also dropped to 0-2 as well. So now all these Big Ten teams we were expected to be those top dogs this season, there's 2 left. It's Ohio State and Wisconsin. And neither one of them are going to face each other, obviously, going up into the final week, where they will then face each other in Big Ten championship as long as that all plays out. But Ohio State, even with Wisconsin, we've only seen them play that one time. That was to Illinois. So it'll be interesting to look at moving forward. Alabama, though, clear number 2. I had them moved up to number 1. Clemson was no longer the unanimous number 1. I dropped them down. They struggled in that first half against Boston College. I might move them back up to number 1, depending on how they play against Notre Dame. If this is a blowout, like I think a lot of us are thinking it's going to be, Clemson's going to be unanimous number 1 once again. But with Bama's 41-0 victory over Mississippi State, they got the bye week coming up. It'll be a nice refresher. Go in, start processing, looking at the game film of what Bama is. Are they going to be this legit team? We know they've already faced some good teams this season. Can they keep it up? We're thinking they can. SEC championship games, most likely Alabama, as always, taking on one of these 2 right here. Georgia, Florida. Keep in mind, Texas A&M right here as well. Crawling in, creeping in the back of your mind, living rent-free. That's going to do it here. Casual Sports Report Top 12. We're going to have another one next week. This was in place of our normally scheduled Casual Sports podcast. There were a few events this weekend. We won't go into those due to some personal issues that forced us to cancel our podcast. We will be back next week, I should say, next Monday. As always, we film. Videos go up on Tuesday on our channel. You guys know that. Make sure to take care, stay healthy, watch out. Coronavirus is still running rampant right now. Hope you all have a great rest of your week. I'm Alek Koberna. We'll see you next time.